can't believe we're about to read Ted
Callister. We haven't done one of these in a while.
Discouraging.
Yeah.
This one actually triggered me. I haven't been triggered by the church stuff in a minute, maybe because it's kind of off my radar generally. I have my own stuff going on social media. But this one was just like, oh, it's like the day before Pride and you're going to say some horseshit like this and it's published in the church news, so my whole goddamn family's going to see it. Like,
Well, I have seen nothing. I've just heard that people are mad about it. So,
Yeah.
But you read the whole thing.
Yeah, I read the whole thing this morning out of spite.
Spite. It's called a fence at the top or an ambulance at the bottom, question mark.
Our friend Annika whited out some of the words, so it was like, Elder Tad R. Callister, a top or a bottom.
So is this just an article he wrote for the church news?
It might have been a talk that they converted. I'm not sure, but
either way, published 28th of May 2021.
So it's not like this is some old talk that we're resurfacing. This is current. Is he Quorum of the 12 now?
he's like was a 70.
Or is he just a 70?
70.
But did he get promoted?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He might even be emeritus now. But he's kind of set himself up as like an apologist wannabe. He knows better than you that there is some good factual information out there proving that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that the Book of Mormon happened in the United States of God bless America.
Well, I can't wait. Should we just start reading it? How long is it?
Too long, but also not too bad.
Not too bad. Okay. If you were asked, what is the greatest challenge facing our nation today, how would you respond? The economy, national security, immigration, gun control, poverty, racism, crime, pandemics, climate change. While each of these is a valid concern and deserves attention, okay, that's nice, and Quorum of the 12 for validating, I'm just going into this blind, pretending I know nothing. He's used the phrase gun control and climate change, so I know, but while each
he hasn't taken a stance on any of those. In his mind, it's very good to take really horseshit stances on all of these things.
What do you think?
I think so. The man's a goblin.
Okay, well, anyway. While each of these is a valid concern and deserves attention, I do not believe that any of them strikes at the heart of our greatest challenge, a return to family and moral values. Okay, you literally will not have any human families if climate change, isn't stopped. So how can you possibly say that? Because you're religious and you believe that it's all about the next life. But it's like moral values, the family, that's meaningless if there's no humans on the earth. If the earth is uninhabitable. To put our prime focus on other challenges is to strike at the leaves, not the root of the problem. Okay, I hate this. I hate, especially related to climate change, because it is the single biggest issue on our planet today. We will not continue as a species if we don't sort it. Just to say that caring about climate change is just like the leaves, it's immediately relegating something like, climate change, sustainability to just like a side thing in Mormons' lives at best. At best. I mean, that's even supposing they care at all.
When we're all drowning in this apocalyptic flood, we're going to be
leaves! Don't get distracted! We're still doing family dinner on the boat!
We should have banned anal sex!
It is, as some have noted, to put an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff rather than a fence at the top. It literally isn't, because if climate change really hits the fan, the cliff's collapsed into the sea and you're in there with it.
This is okay, so let's use the analogy, the plant, the roots.
Caring about climate change is just a band-aid for family shit.
It's he's talking about a plant, roots, gotta get to the roots of the problem. Great. We're talking about how plants need sunlight and water and soil. There's bigger things than just these roots. It's a whole connected ecosystem.
The Family, a Proclamation to the World, confirms the essentiality of the family unit to the well-being of society. You know what's also essential is oxygen. The family is ordained of God. Marriage between man and woman is essential to his eternal plan. The proclamation then warns that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets. It then concludes, we call upon responsible citizens and officers of government everywhere to promote these measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family as the fundamental unit of society. Okay. Cool, great idea. let's not worry about the climate change then, or racism, or crimes.
And also, like, families are important. Like, close human bonds are important. The problem with the church is that they don't really care about families. All they want to do is feel like their family is the only kind of real family. They're like, oh, family is important. And anyone with a family is like, yeah, no shit. And they're like, oh, but you're not a family, so you wouldn't understand. It's like, just stop.
Also, Mormonism really divides families, especially in the modern age where people are leaving the church because of racism and crimes. So it's like, yeah, like humans function well when there's strong communities, strong individual family units within those communities. But Mormonism is quite a divisive force in the world these days in terms of that. So something to think about, Tad. It was the year 1833. The first presidency of the church had been reorganized, composed of Joseph Smith the prophet, Sidney Rigdon, first counselor, and Frederick G. Williams, second counselor. One might wonder what new truths, what divine disclosures, what breathtaking insights would be revealed to this newly called first presidency.
I wouldn't bait your breath.
Certainly, glorious truths were revealed. See Doctrine and Covenants 93. What happened in that one?
Incredible shit, let me tell you.
This is our most
Some of God's
badass.
biggest bangers.
Okay, I'm going to DNC 93.
All of God's summer bops are on that track.
Okay, this just seems like basic Christian shit.
Love it.
So, I'm not impressed. Anyway, but the climax of this revelation focused on the basics of the gospel, for in essence, each of these men was instructed to set in order his own house. The message to these men likewise applies to each of us. We must first set in order our own homes in order to have a prosperous society. I mean, there's wisdom there in that, if you haven't sort of dealt with your own shit, you're probably going to go out and transfer it onto society.
And what is dealing with your shit? It's reckoning with your own dark side, the things about the fear about your own self that you have been conditioned to hold in you and to project onto other people. Part of that is recognizing that you're doing that. And that's exactly what Tad Callister is doing. Because instead of like being like focusing on how he can strengthen his own family,
he's like, I'm going to condemn other people's families.
Exactly!
Yeah. And he's basically saying this to be like, your home's not in order because you're gay, I'm assuming.
Yeah, mine is, of course.
Former U.S. Attorney General William P. Barr addressed the critical nature of families and moral values, and in doing so addressed some governmental problems that are counterproductive to their advancement. Instead of addressing the underlying cause, we have the state in the role of alleviator of bad consequences. Oh, fuck, that's a horrible quote. So the reaction to growing illegitimacy is not sexual responsibility, but abortion. Oh, shit, there's a lot.
There's a lot.
No, I thought we were just roasting Tad.
Because, oh God, he's already labeled children who born in his idea of a perfect family are illegitimate.
That's so mean.
No person is illegitimate.
I was born outside of wedlock and I turned out bad and then good, so.
You're like Tad's worst nightmare.
I know.
You are illegitimate.
Okay, also, I mean, I shouldn't have to say this, but people don't just need abortions because they are sexually irresponsible. Plenty of people will be very safe, will use protection, and will get pregnant. Like, it happens. There's not really a foolproof method, I have the Nexplanon, though, highly recommend. Also, I mean, there are obviously women who need abortions for health reasons that, did deliberately conceive a child, and then it becomes, medically unfeasible for them to continue. People...
You know what helps people not get pregnant out of wedlock or in circumstances where they're not...
Sex education.
And guess which state has the worst funding, or at least some of the worst funding for sex education, and just the most absurd approach to it? Utah, run by Mormons. Abstinence-only
sex education does not work. It's harmful. It results in a lot of teen pregnancies.
Read a book, Tad.
The reaction to drug addiction is safe injection sites. Okay, again, read a book, because it's like... The reason they do that is because, research and evidence shows that the best way to, reduce deaths by drugs is safe injection sites. It's not about saying, yes, it's fine to do drugs, but it's you don't make drug addiction more illegal and have that solve the problem. This is such a I can already tell he's going to go into like a completely void of evidence approach to solving these problems. Because safe injection sites are not the government saying like, yes, this is fine. It's the government saying we want less people to die from this. Addiction is about like unhealed trauma and a loss of connection. It's not about people just deciding to become drug addicts.
But his whole thing is that it's a moral failure. That's his whole thing, is like a moral failure.
I know. Which is just so fucked up and just not in line with evidence and reality. People become addicted to drugs because the pain that they are dealing with is too unbearable. It's not really about the drug. It's, you know, the whole, like, when addiction, ask why the pain, not why the drug. Lots you could say about that.
Look 'em up.
The solution to the breakdown of the family is for the state to set itself up as the ersatz husband for single mothers.
What is the ersatz
I don't know what that word means, but I'm assuming what he's saying is the government shouldn't be giving, like, money to single mothers, which is so fucked up.
Yeah.
You don't want them to be able to get abortions.
Basically, like, being like, if you're a single mother with an illegitimate child, the government is your sugar daddy, and we just can't have that.
Yeah, ersatz.
For sugar families are not real families.
It means made or used as a substitute, typically an inferior one. So he's basically criticizing the state for providing for single mothers, but you want these women to be forced to carry babies they don't want to have to term and then, you know, be their mothers, but you don't want to give them any financial assistance. Come on, this is actually a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. Well, another thing is it is also putting all the responsibility on women. Like, if you're in a situation with a man where you get pregnant and then your husband turns out to be abusive, or he leaves you, or he dies, or anything, it's like he's criticizing the idea that the government should step in and make sure that, like, that child doesn't starve to death.
Because his solution is, well, they ought to join Mormonism, and then we'll give them a job.
They ought to have just made a completely different choice. Never mind the fact they've already made all these choices, and this is the situation we're in, and there's, like, very real consequences, potentially death, if we don't step in.
Again, assuming that he makes choices to be morally upright while everybody else is not doing their best.
Is choosing. Oh,
Nobody intentionally doesn't do their best.
I did not go into this knowing I would need to be prepared for this. The call comes for more and more social programs to deal with the wreckage. While we think we are solving problems, we are underwriting them. Okay, once again, he's in opposition to facts and evidence, because evidence is pretty clear on the idea that social programs benefit society. They also even cost society less in the long run. How often we choose worldly solutions that nurture rather than nullify existing issues of immorality.
What a weird word choice.
Worldly solutions? Like not having single mothers be out on the streets with starving children?
I'm telling you, and like to say that to nurture problems, what the world needs is more nurturing.
Yeah. We've been doing this approach and it's not going well. Nullify existence.
It gets so much worse.
He's basically saying, well, if we would teach the single mothers, if we could just like not give the single mothers
if we could teach them to not be goddamn whores all the fucking time, that this is
yeah, the single
Dad sucks.
I was the child of a single mother, and it really hits. How often we adopt a new sin in an effort to cover or hide an existing one, and in the process compound rather than resolve the problem at hand. This is the MO of Satan. Everything about this I hate in every single way, but the biggest thing, I mean, he's just completely missing the fact that humans are the products of the systems they grow up in. If you grow up in a culture where you are not taught good sexual health, you're not taught about family planning, about contraception, about safe sex, then you are a lot more likely to get into a situation where you're pregnant when you don't want to be. Like if you are from a family with a lot of trauma and you've been raised to believe that abuse is love, then you're a lot more likely to get with a man who's going to be abusive to you and potentially end up a single mother. None of these problems exist in a vacuum because people are choosing to be immoral. It's like humans are the products of systems. Tad is the furthest thing from a systems thinker. I hate it so much. It's like his systems theory and then his Tad just like the absolute bottom of like the logical worldview pile. It's absurd that a grown man is this stupid.
Yeah, and that he is seen as an intellectual in a community of millions of people, including my parents.
He's such an idiot.
I can't, like, I was like, oh my God, I forget how much, like, this religion is just like, I refuse to confront reality. Everyone's trying to get me.
He's not even giving kind of like the bare minimum dose of empathy to make it seem like he gives a shit. He's just doing like this hardline, weird. Should I keep reading?
Yeah.
So
also, you killed that. People are gonna be like, "Damn, Sam,
I hope so.
Go off, Queen."
So talking about Satan, his plan is in direct opposition to the family proclamation. It is an insidious attempt to destroy the nuclear family and God's moral values. Oh yeah, that concept of the nuclear family that's been around since Adam and Eve. He disguises his plan of attack with alluring labels such as pro-choice for abortion, love and compassion for endorsement of same-sex marriage, and environmental emergency for promotion of a zero-growth population agenda. I mean, the zero-growth population agenda, that's kind of a separate thing, so...
He's living in Saturday's Warriors
maybe
still.
push that one aside, but... Each of these proposals, however, Can I just say, it's also, like... It's pretty extreme to... The third one is a zero-growth population agenda, because I don't know many people... Like, am I reluctant to have biological children because of climate change? Yes, absolutely. But... I don't know that many people are as radical as promoting a zero growth.
I don't think that is an agenda.
Niche, you know?
Yeah, that's not...
Like,
no, it's literally from Saturday's Warrior from the 80s.
Okay.
There's like all the wicked people, sinners are like, zero population is the answer, my friends.
Because it's these two...
And Mormons think that all secular people are like, we will stop people from having children.
It's in his psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Tad was affected by Saturday's Warrior. We give him a pass on that one.
We were all deeply moved and changed forever.
Each of these proposals, however, constitutes a frontal attack on the family unit and its survival. It's not like anybody who's gay is stopping Mormons from getting married and doing their little thing. Like, no one's stopping that. They still have full freedom to do that. These solutions are nothing less than time bombs wrapped with glitter and a glamorous bow.
The church is publishing this days before Pride Month.
This is the biggest gift to ex-Mormonism. Any progressive Mormon reading this is going to be like, this is unhinged.
Yeah.
This is unhinged.
This is unhinged.
Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, the day of reckoning will come and the explosion will occur. It's also laced with just sort of bitterness and resentment towards people different with. You can see the us versus them so glaringly in this. Like, he's looking forward to a day when, you know, the pro-choice love and compassion, gay rights people will just be, you know, bombed to death.
I think that's why I like this one was just so... got me so good, is because you realize how this religion is so devoid of genuine spiritual insight, let alone spiritual power. That they're just, like, if there were a Satan, this would be the way he does it. By, like, forcing you to remain in ignorance, by thinking the darkness is all around me, and everyone's trying to get me, and all I have to do is point my finger at who needs to be destroyed, and there's the problem. Like, that's the way that Satan would do it. This guy is, like, a businessman working for a business. And the church, I said this on an Instagram rant the other day, because it really got me. But the church has spent millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to legally disenfranchise gay people. Gay people aren't doing that to Mormons. Like, no one's being like, Mormons shouldn't be allowed to get married, and people be like, they did 200 years ago. And it's like, yeah, that's when the church taught that monogamy was the root of all the evil happening in the world. Brigham Young literally said it. Look it up. He's like, want to know why Rome fell? It's because the plague of monogamy that was started by a band of robbers.
And didn't he say the priesthood would be lost if the church ever embraced monogamy again?
Yeah, they all say that. Like, don't come to me with this, like, the traditional family that has been, you know, holding the mast of this ship for all eternity. It's like the nuclear family is a modern invention, even by your own religion.
Yeah.
This guy,
gosh,
so spiritually devoid.
It's bad. It's shit like this that makes, like, Russell M. Nelson's Give Thanks video. That's why I watched that and I'm like, it's not too bad. Because he's just like, wear a mask, the pandemic's real, and be more grateful, which is like, you know. This is really bad. I'm really shocked at how bad this is. It's like, do they not think that people will read it? Like,
that's what he wants. He wants people...
You're trying to stem hemorrhaging members in a global church in 2021. This is such a bad strategy. Even if you believe all this shit, like, at least pretend you don't, like some of the other leaders do. One cannot circumvent God's commands and expect to escape the divine consequences, regardless of how decorated the package may be or how cosmetically appealing the language may sound. Yeah, nothing's a more decorated package or cosmetically appealing than having an abortion. Like, everyone loves that stuff.
Did he just acknowledge his own secret appreciation for gay glamour? His temptation?
Sounds like it.
With beauty?
How decorated the package would be. I don't know, I'm just thinking about abortion right now, and, you know, how I'm sure he would describe abortion as some kind of easy way out, and, you know, it's like so the woman can just keep being a hussy. So
you can just have a great time down at the abortion clinic. I get one every weekend. I love it.
So fun. I hear it's the worst pain ever, but yeah, so fun. I think it shows a lot more respect for life to not bring a child into the world that you do not want to, grow to full term, let alone then parent. Like, it's just... It shows so much more respect for the sanctity of life. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm going to link my abortion article in the description box, because I don't want to get too into it, but I do just feel so frustrated with discussions around abortion, because really life cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred from one source to another, and choosing to get an abortion is just putting an end to, like, the continuation of one potential life form. Just like how when you take birth control, you're, like, putting an end to, like, one potential thing, but it's not stopping you from having children in the future. Like, it's just... Anyway, read the article. I'm not going to get into it.
Did you see it was a buzz on Twitter today about the Business Week article that was like, what is truly tragic is all the unborn people who are going to be cut off from coming into this world. And it's like, that's not sad. They literally don't exist. That's like saying, like, think of all the kangaroos who will not be born.
Think of all the sperms you're throwing away every time you use a condom. Like, it's just stupid logic.
Like, they don't exist. Oh, I'm gonna grieve my friend Steve, who I just made up.
Steve, you would have been everything I needed. There's a hole in my heart where Steve should be. Basically, the only justification for being against abortion is this idea that every... fertilized egg contains a soul, which is a religious idea. It can't be tested. Like, obviously, I mean, if you're religious-minded, fair enough. But it's like, the concept of souls is the only justification for being against abortion, because it's like most people get abortions before, like, the fetus can even has nerve endings, so it doesn't feel pain. Those who get them in, like, the third trimester, it's because of medical reasons, like, always. So...
If the American ideal has any, like, import at all, it's that it was constructed with the idea of being a secular government, which is really, really important and kind of a novel idea in the world. Mm-hmm. And Christians act like now, like, whoa, we're supposed to be a Christian country. And it's like, no, we for sure...
That was the whole thing. England is really Christian. Just Christian in a way that you don't like.
Because if you're making laws based on things like souls, that means anyone's imaginary idea you can be forced to live under someone's imaginary ideas about life.
You write about how scared you are of Islam because you think that they're going to implement Sharia law in the US. So it's like, it's the same thing. It's the equivalent is already playing out. I mean,
so if you can't prove a soul, if you can't, like, prove these concepts that you have about, there's a person who's just waiting to get in and they get in and you're killing them, like, if you can't prove that, and that's why you can't make laws about it. Like, it's absurd to want to. Like, would you want someone else to make laws based on their spiritual ideas about where you came from and where you're going? Of course not. That's insane. That's why we have to do things based on a secular... So even if you don't agree on it, just with, like, the principle, you'd have to just allow people the choice, the freedom, the liberty, the things you profess to care about. Tad.
Well, Tana, if our prime focus is to promote family and moral values, then we will experience the consequences that flow from such efforts. Less crime and drug abuse, less fraud and abuse, fewer divorces and lawsuits, fewer babies born out of wedlock, more ethical employees and employers, a reduction in welfare cases, less contention and hate, and a resurgence of faith in God. There is so much to unpack in what he just said.
He is implying that gay people, that people who have abortions, that people who are environmentally concerned, he is implying that gay people are responsible for all these things. Or at least are, like, huge contributors, and that if we could just focus our moral attention on avoiding the temptation of homosexuality, then there wouldn't be so much crime.
It's completely divorced, to use a trigger word, Tad, completely divorced from evidence and reality. For example, it talks about how, if our prime focus is to promote family and moral values, aka this patriarchal, like, Christian idea of it that he has from the 1950s, then we will experience less babies born out of wedlock. Well, we know that in areas where there's abstinence-only sex education, which is, I'm sure, what Tad would promote, that there are higher babies born out of wedlock, higher teen pregnancies. It's typically Christian areas where they're really concerned about the family, this style of family, where there is abstinence-only sex education. So that's just not true. Fewer divorces. I mean, religious Christian people that are aligned with this patriarchal idea about the family, they don't have fewer divorces. The divorce rate is roughly the same, I think. He said...
Mormons only being slightly higher.
Less fraud and abuse. The entire Mormon church is a fraud, need I say any more? Also abuse. Abuse, especially the sexual abuse of children, for example, thrives in these, like, patriarchal environments.
Okay, that was another thing that pissed me off about this. Because, again, the church is a business. Like, you can look at the... I just posted a link to an article talking about how and we've said this before, that the church in multiple decades paid less in humanitarian aid than Walmart did in 1 year. Walmart, the whore of Babylon, if there ever was one, pays more humanitarian money in a year than the church does in decades. And when you actually look at what the church is contributing, you see that only like 27% of that is actually money. The rest of it is the value of the service that's offered. Mm-hmm. That's insane. That's a fraud. That's not a church. That's not a charity. That's a fraud. And the church, you know who they excommunicate more than anybody else? The one thing that for sure will get you excommunicated?
Money.
Touching the money.
Yeah.
You touch the money, that you always have to have two people in the room when church money's handled. Not when you're in the room with a minor.
Kids about their masturbation habits.
Exactly. The church has has lobbied against measures that would protect children from being abused in the church. They have fought to keep abusers private. I ask anyone who's been in a bishopric, and they'll tell every single person I know, even including active Mormons, are like, oh yeah, some pedophile, like, we didn't report it to the police, we dealt with it, he repented, no issue. Now he's working in the Boy Scouts, like...
Oh, fuck.
People who are embezzling, stealing other people's money don't get excommunicated. People who are committing felonies, people who are doing outrageous things, often are not disciplined by the church, often are protected by the church. But if you touch their money, gone.
Yeah. There's so much, we could do an entire video on, each point he makes in this paragraph, so I'll try not to go on too much, but even saying less contention and hate, I have not found that the types of Christian communities that promote this idea of the family have less hate. In fact, I've found a lot of them to be more intolerant, I think. He's showing his intolerance in this. He's just being openly judgy, telling people that are on welfare that they're immoral and they need to take more responsibility. It's like, that's not how the world works. It's just not true that people are on welfare because they just, make bad choices. It's because they came out of systems that didn't promote their well-being financially, emotionally, in every imaginable way. Also more ethical employees and employers. I feel like tons of people say the Mormon church is very shady in how they do business. Or a lot of Mormon business owners will be shady because...
There is a cliche in the church that if you go to... Don't do business with a Mormon. Yeah, don't do business with a Mormon. No, it's, too. The Utah is one of the highest states of
white-collar crime,
white-collar crime and affinity fraud. Yeah. And people who work for the church often lose their testimony. I always heard that growing up. Don't work for the church, you'll lose your testimony.
I don't know if Utah has the highest rates of white-collar crime, by the way. Look that up, don't believe me.
Definitely extremely high.
But the affinity fraud, I have heard that. Yeah. Hated that whole paragraph. Should we just move on? We just agreed to move on. Okay. Then we will have a fence at the top of the cliff rather than the need for an ambulance at the bottom. Okay. Oh, God. Where is this going?
Because he's, leading a people, blindfolded along this trail. And he's like, what we need is a fence. And it's like, no, you need to take off the blindfolds of everyone and then, tell them there's a thing there and to avoid it. That'll do it.
Well, this next sentence certainly inspires hope in me for the rest of this article. The colonists understood this.
They knew how to deal with those kinds.
Yeah, they took responsibility and did the genocide, just like God wanted them to. Arthur Schlesinger wrote...
Really? I'm sorry, we can't just, gloss over the colonists,
I know.
using them as a
It's like
pillar
a
of
pillar
morality.
I know. It's like they raped native women. They wiped out entire populations. They couldn't be a bigger destroying force of the family.
Literally fed gay people to dogs.
Doesn't count because Native American people like aren't real families because they're not.
Okay. What is so the church has this ideal about building Zion where everyone has everything in common and we're like one big family.
No contention. It's like, okay, that sounds like North Korea.
Well, when Christopher Columbus, God fuck his soul, arrived in the United States, in the Americas, in his letters to the Spanish royalty was like, these are the best people I have ever seen in my whole life. They have everything in common. Nobody is out of place. Everyone is like happy and they share and they get along.
Why do you treat them like shit?
And then he was like, so they were very easy to enslave. I'm sending you 300 now. Like,
God.
That's they already had like the good things. And you read, there's so many accounts like that from the original colonizers that are like, these people are the best people. They're totally honest. They're 100% giving. They'll give you the shirt off their back of the ass because like, they're like, what? This came from the earth. It's yours. It's mine. It's everyone's. And like, they took care of each other and easily entered and exited relationships and had villages that you know, we would say it takes a village to raise a child. It really does. And they were doing that and like doing it great. They just weren't like creating capital and building big steel ships to blow up other countries. Like, they just weren't bought like in that insane game.
They hadn't bought into the delusion of constant growth,
which made them easier to wipe out and to destroy. And And so to say like, oh yeah, the colonizers had it right, like fucking tone deaf,
this
man.
Is not. I mean, this is so bad right now, and it's only gonna age worse. I stress picked my finger, and now it's bleeding bad. Okay, so blah blah blah. This guy Arthur wrote, although colonial life was woven of many strands, English, Scotch, Irish, Dutch, French, German, and so on. All the new groups, whatever their ethnic differences, the massive ethnic differences between England, Scotland, Ireland, Denmark, and France.
White, and whiter. If they can get along, we can all listen to me.
Whatever their ethnic differences shared the common belief that the family was, in Franklin's phrase, the sacred cement of all societies. You literally killed native families.
Because they weren't real families.
Also, that's not even... the church took Native American children away from their families in as recently as the 80s or 90s. When did the Native American placement program end?
Oh yeah, my parents grew up having
Anyway, they just took these Native American children away from their families because they had the savior complex and thought that they would do better in these white Mormon families instead of just providing resources or helping Native American people build up better system.
Yeah, rather than
mental.
It's insane.
Mental.
Insane. Such an insane superiority complex.
I'm so glad this is nearly over.
Yeah.
No government program or policy can compensate for lack of strong families and moral values. There is no... Again, completely doesn't understand that the strength of the family depends on the systems that the family exists in. And if you improve the conditions with which we're raising children, if you make childhood less traumatic for people, if you empower communities and the families within them to lead happy, healthy, prosperous lives... then you'll get what you want. But the thing is he is attached to this demonstrably false idea that helping people create stronger communities and stronger systems, through various welfare programs is bad. And it's the evidence supports the idea that social programs benefit societies, benefit families ultimately. Anyway, so this is just a demonstrably false worldview.
Mm-hmm. And the cause of crime, scarcity. Anywhere where people are fighting for resources and there's not enough and people aren't being able to be paid well enough and the cost of living is too high, where they're living in a state of fear and panic all the time, that contributes. That's what's causing crime.
So he said that strong families and moral values are the sacred cement that holds our society together. To believe and act otherwise is to build our national hopes and aspirations on a foundation of sand, literally capitalism, this idea that endless growth is the only way to go, never mind the fact that it's destroying the earth in the process and all of our resources are ultimately finite. Blah, blah, blah. Build our national hopes and aspirations on a foundation of sand, like the house of the foolish man in the parable of Christ. The rain descended and the floods came and the winds blew and beat upon that house and it fell and great was the fall of it. It reminds me of how so many Mormons are sold this fantasy of the family. So many people in the LDS Church, they date for a small amount of time and then they get married quickly, have children quickly, and then we'll realize, like, let's take women, for example, they'll realize, wait, I'm not fulfilled by this life, but it was sold to me as this fairy tale. I'm now unhappy. That to me is like building a foundation on a house of sand, because it's literally building your life on these false ideas, on these delusional ideas about reality. You know, like, any two people who are united in Christ can make a marriage work. No, not if one of them was like abused as a child and hasn't healed their violent tendencies, and that's just going to be a part of your marriage for as long as you're in it because they're unwilling to go to therapy. Like, no.
And usually if at least the woman can be submissive enough to hearken to the patriarchy and be,
exactly.
you know,
That's how I fucking
take the problem on herself. That's usually how it goes.
Building your house on sand is building a house on a shitty foundation. And what's a shittier foundation than false premises? And that is Mormonism.
Through and through. So when I first reacted to this, I saw a paragraph that was talking about, you know, homosexuality being, or same-sex marriage, which, even if you're like, ew, no, homosexuality, gross, like, grow up, first of all. Second of all, like, other people doing their life, that's them. Like, of course, if their relationship, they feel like they want to get married, yeah, you should be able to. I'm not going to, but that doesn't, like, you getting married doesn't hurt my marriage.
But it does in their mind, because their worldview isn't just like, oh yes, I love my straight Mormon marriage. It's like they have these well, I mean, prophecy is a shitty concept, because it's like they have these ideas about how the world's going to end, which, number one, that's problematic, because then you don't feel like you can create a better, fairer, you know, it's all just through the narrative of your bullshit religious worldview. But I'm doing bad jobs.
Okay, well, speaking of prophecy, like, again, what was made so abundant by this thing is that there is no spirit, like, authentic spiritual gift in Mormonism. Like, if it is, it's so squelched and just like a tiny little seedling breaking out, like a little weed breaking out of the cement. Like, that's Mormon spirituality. And you can see how they're so invested in dampening other people's authentic spiritual connection. Because being queer is fucking magic. It's fucking magic. When we grow and, like, level up as human beings, what we're actually doing is shedding smaller conceptions that we have about ourselves. These limiting beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of. When you shed that and you allow yourself to expand into bigger form and do things you haven't done before, you level up, you gain power. And your spiritual essence becomes more vitalized. And people who are able to let go of the cultural psychosis that we have, that this culture has about homosexuality being this great depravity and not just a thing that humans have been doing all along the way and that animals do and that it's, like, just part of the gig. Like, when you let go of that and allow yourself to expand into a more authentic expression, you level up, you gain power, you become fucking magic. And that's what queer people are. And you see so much of our creativity, even in Mormon culture, has been the fucking gays. And that's why they clamp down on road shows, because they don't want people connecting with that creative essence. They don't want them self-expressing. They don't want them claiming and expanding their gifts. They just put out a thing about fucking energy healing. Like, oh, you're not allowed to energy heal. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you own the button. No one can do anything without your permission. It's like, fuck right off.
Yeah. So much I could say. I mean, also, like, it's magic when women have the ability to choose whether or not they have a fucking baby. You know, in a world that doesn't even support single mothers, so even if she should have, it's so insane that these are the people that claim to be the Church of Jesus Christ, who was like, give to the poor, give to those who need it. Even, like, don't ask why they need it, just give it to them. Like, don't think it's up for you to judge whether they deserve it, just give it.
Judge not, that ye be not judged.
And then his idea of a better society involves one where we don't support single mothers with welfare programs. That's insane.
Not with our collective efforts. That's socialism.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, let's just rely on the individual goodness of people who are also taught this bullshit to help these people out.
It's insane that their whole worldview is like, we gotta just keep destroying shit so that it gets so bad that Jesus has to rescue us. So that you guys feel so bad that Jesus rescues. It's like, that's an insane plan. Like, God wants you to learn how to be gods. Wouldn't he want you to learn how to take care of it on your own? Isn't that the whole fucking point? Not to just keep consuming our way into this hole and putting down and shaming everybody who's not like us until things get so bad that finally, like, Jesus is like, okay, fine, I'll step in so you see how awesome I was and how bad you are. Like, this is so... Again, these are prophets who don't prophesy, seers who do not see, revelators who do not reveal. This Family the Proclamation thing was a PR publication. It was written by lawyers and signed
Also,
by businessmen and lawyers.
Can we talk about they really stand by this proclamation? It's like, what about all the other ones that you now disavow and act like they weren't a thing?
Mm-hmm. And no one's speaking in the name of the Lord. Like, it's Mormonism. We have prophets on the earth today. Oh yeah, what are they? What is God saying?
They can't even read basic scientific research.
And it's like, well, God doesn't really talk to us in the same way that he talked to Joseph Smith or any of the other prophets, and they don't really come from the same kind of place, because, all the biblical prophets, they were people who were living on the margins of society and dwelling in caves and things and always criticizing the religious hierarchy, and, everyone thought that they were wild and didn't have the authority, but their authority came from God, not man. We do things differently now. God is the complete opposite now, and you know how Jesus said that, like, business people won't, or, like, rich people won't be able to get into heaven? Now, actually, they're, like, the kind of the pillar of society, and we should listen to them and do everything that they want.
Yeah.
This is a fucking fraud!
Yeah, let's not even get into the fact that, like, he uses that quote from the Attorney General, and the whole thing of this article is, like, don't give money to people who need it, don't help the disenfranchised. But it's like the US government, like, basically exists to serve corporations right now, who also don't give a shit about the family. No. It's just like every issue he mentions, he has no adult understanding of. Like drug abuse, it's just presented as just like a moral failing, and it's like drug abuse happens because people are traumatized. Like, it happens for a reason, but there's none of that. It's just this very childlike black and white narrative that posits that everyone's just choosing to be bad, and we just need to make gay marriage illegal and like stop giving single mothers welfare and ban abortion, and then that will get rid of hate and contention in our society. God, that's terrifying in 2021. I just feel like the main message of this was don't help people who need it.
Keep your head in the fucking sand, because let me tell you, the world is a scary place.
This is why it's important to talk about the like demonstrably false nature of Mormonism's truth claims and why its teachings are harmful, because people read this shit and then they're like, oh, I don't need to care about any of the actual issues going on in the world as long as I'm in my straight patriarchal marriage and like opposing the rights of gay people or whatever.
Which
then
is
like
exactly
I'm going to make
done
society better. And it's like, it's just like comparing this. So I know people have different opinions. I personally really like listening to Sam Harris and appreciate the way he thinks and how much he cares about reducing suffering in the world, and just comparing like this worldview to like Sam Harris's worldview of like, how do we make the world a better place? Like, this is deranged, unhinged, void of any intelligence, void of any awareness of like reality. Mm-hmm. And then you listen to Sam Harris, someone who like dedicates his life to studying the systems that like create these problems, and it's just like,
These people aren't grappling with big questions. They're avoiding them at all costs.
Environmental emergency is in quotation marks. Come on!
My aunt once said, like, well, if I wasn't a Mormon, I'd be off saving the whales or something stupid like that. And I was like, you don't think God would want you to save the fucking whales? He spent, like, billions of years evolving those bitches, and you're just like, fuck them. The most majestic things in the whole goddamn sea, longer than a school bus. You can look that thing in the eye and be like,
Richer emotional lives than Homo sapiens?
Yeah. Like, you gotta be nuts. Like, how apathetic do you gotta be? What do you think God wants? You think God, like, just cares that you're sitting in a church singing every Sunday and being like, I don't masturbate, I'm not gay, I'm getting into heaven. Like, what are you doing? You're not doing anything to merit salvation any more than any other person on this earth. I'm so sick of the hypocrisy.
That article was, even for Mormonism, was really, really bad.
Yeah.
It's something I wouldn't have been surprised to see 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. But I'm very surprised that in our current climate, where they are losing members so quickly, I think Trump made a lot of Mormons more progressive because they didn't like him and they didn't feel like Trump aligned with their values,
And the rest are these people who are just like,
it's just madness. I can't believe that you just have, it's so obvious how like the LDS Church leadership does not have what it takes to stem the hemorrhage of members. It just doesn't.
Because
like,
they are not spiritual leaders.
If this is the best you can do, God, like, you're so screwed.
And they are, but they'll keep getting richer because they keep just hiring on better and better businessmen. So they're going to keep, sequestering money into the coffers of the church, even if the membership dwindles. They're playing the long-term game, which is money, 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 power, power, power. It has nothing to do with
So
spiritual
support
growth.
us on Patreon. We don't need 10%, 0.5% would be great.
If you're struggling,
Just
don't
kidding.
worry about it. Enjoy the free content.
Yeah, enjoy the free content.
Jesus.
Yeah, I hope you guys... I don't even know what to say about that. That was just really bad.
Sorry.
I didn't enjoy that. It wasn't even the kind of article that was, like, enjoyable to smack down in any way, because it was like, oh my God, first of all, I have to go back to, like, a 13-year-old level of reasoning skills to even, like, begin to, like,
a 13-year-old from, like,
delusion.
1930.
Oh, yeah, I know. There's way smarter 13-year-olds than this, for sure, like, who have way more critical thinking skills. But, yeah, it's just so void of critical thinking skills and empathy that it's like, how do you even begin unpacking how terrible that was? There was no empathy present. No. Like, it was so cold. I think... even Russell M. Nelson, like, I watched his give thanks thing, there's at least the pretense of empathy.
He at least can smile.
And there are other apostles who, worst case scenario, pay more lip service to empathy. Best case scenario, there is some genuine empathy there. Not here. No. This was just, like, it's like, what are you even proposing, dude? Like, it's also, like, kind of, that was what that was. I'm bothered. I'm glad we get to finish the Charlie video as a palate cleanser.
Oh, I forgot we have a whole other video to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our battery died. Okay, well, thanks for watching. If you want to support us in continuing to challenge the likes of Tadar Callister, please consider supporting our channel on Patreon. To all the single mothers out there, I see you. It's hard. You guys rock.
And to all the queer people, happy Pride. Y'all deserved it.
And those of you doing crimes, just make sure they're against the Jeff Bezos empire. And
Jeffrey Bezos.
Don't steal from Whole Foods, but do.
Be gay. Do crimes.
Bye.